progressive, left-wing criminal justice reform and ending mass incarceration is a terrible idea. Good people of all ethnicities, persuasions, religions, backgrounds, they all suffer as a result of these ideas. These are destructive. They are rooted in a kind of guilt complex and really societal nihilism. We just burn it all down. Maybe we'll build something better when we're done.
We talked yesterday about all the different states that were going and having their primaries. And primarily, we focused on the state of California because there were real stakes in this primary election, Buck. And I want to hit two particular races of incredible significance that demonstrate the growing red wave and how it may even be sweeping across the state of California. Two races. First, as we have let you know, the George Soros-funded Chesa Boudin district attorney of San Francisco, who has basically turned San Francisco streets into a cesspool. Drugs, crime, in terms of property crime, cars being burglarized, homes. It's a beautiful city, San Francisco. It is a total mess right now. We got a lot of listeners in the Bay Area who know exactly what we're talking about. So there's a recall. Recall of Chesa Boudin attempted because crime is out of control and he's not taking it seriously enough. Chesa Boudin got recalled 60 to 40. Let me repeat that. 60% of people voted in San Francisco, probably the single most liberal city in all of America. 40% supported him. Buck, this number one shockwave election.
Now, this is in line with what the polls were predicting. So this is what, there's a reason why we've been talking about this for weeks. It did look like this was going to happen. I'm of two minds about this. I mean, on the one hand, San Francisco, you have to check. I think the only city with a higher percentage, and when I say city, I mean, of 500,000 or more, right, is the only one that has a higher percentage of Democrats in San Francisco is actually Washington, D.C. So San Francisco is very left-wing, as we all know. So you're looking at 90% plus Democrats. So 60% of 90% that are Democrats said, we don't want to live with this anarchy anymore. Our test run of The Purge, for those of you who have seen the movie, not fun, not enjoying this. I do have questions about who the 40% are, but that just goes to show you, no matter what Democrats put themselves through, because this is a Democrat enclave. There's no Republican to point a finger at. You can't blame any Republicans in office. These were all Democrat decisions pushed by Democrat voters. I do have to say, though, I think that one of the turning points, and I remember this, was about a year ago this time, you started to see editorials written by local San Francisco thinkers, writers, where they're making cases for things like, hey, look, if someone's breaking into your home and they just want to steal your bicycle or they just want to steal your car,
just let them have
it. Don't call the police, because you could be inviting violence by the police against, and this was the argument, disproportionately people of color. So allow someone, whoever it may be, irrespective of who the assailant may be in this case, or the perpetrator may be, just let them steal your stuff, even if you're home. Don't call the police. They were making this argument. And I think that was when people in San Francisco all of a sudden were like, we got a real problem here, folks.
It's a beautiful city, and they have allowed people to run rampant through it. Is it Union Square in the center of San Francisco, or is it Herald Square?
Herald Square is New York City. I think you're talking about
Union.
Is it? I don't know San Fran well. I've only been there once.
I think it's Union Square. I'll look it up in a sec. But the other thing I would say, Buck, is you remember the viral videos of the organized? Those are big department stores, high-end shopping district in San Francisco. It went super viral where everyone was going in. This was not a random shoplifting. It is a hyper-organized assault, basically, upon all of the high-end shopping stores. And London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, trying to preserve herself, effectively came out and said, we got to get this stuff under control. I think she used a word other than stuff. And so she'll get to appoint a new district attorney. But we've seen so many of these viral shoplifting mass events where it's clearly being done in a business-like manner where you just walk in and take everything.
They changed the incentive structure for criminality in San Francisco. And by the way, not just San Francisco, the exact same mentality. And I want everyone to understand this, because on the one hand, Clay and I are sitting here saying, what we tell you and what this audience knows to be true is true. Progressive, left-wing criminal justice reform and ending mass incarceration is a terrible idea. Good people of all ethnicities, persuasions, religions, backgrounds, they all suffer as a result of these ideas. These are destructive. They are rooted in a kind of guilt complex and really societal nihilism. We just burn it all down. Maybe we'll build something better when we're done. And this has been the case for years now in dozens of cities across the country. George Soros spent $40 million. Now that, I know we talk about presidential elections and it's $1 billion on one side, $1 billion. No one spends money on district attorneys' races, which is why the fact that he was willing to throw $40 million. You spend $1 million, you'll get a lunatic like Larry Krasner elected in Philadelphia, which just had its highest ever murder rate last year. You spend $1 million, you'll get Kim Foxx elected in Chicago. You'll get, I can't even remember all the progressive prosecutors. So Soros and the far left that he represents, because remember, there's all these organizations and nonprofits, and that whole activist left-wing movement seeded these prosecutors all over the country. And then we had the 30% increase in nationwide homicides from 2020 to 2021. Why was that the triggering moment? Why was that the year? Because they had put some of these policies in place, but they were in place, meaning the prosecutors. The George Floyd incident happens. There's a nationwide racial panic. Police are thrown under the bus. Progressive prosecutors get to finally do what they had really wanted to do for years, and we all suffered. And innocent people going about their jobs, innocent people going about their lives, were shot, bludgeoned, assaulted, raped, and robbed, so that progressives in places like San Francisco and New York could feel better about themselves.
Union Square, by the way, we were right, in San Francisco, huge shopping area that has been being robbed systemically for some time now. And to build on your George Soros statements, Buck, $40 million George Soros spent to elect 75 progressive prosecutors over the last decade, meaning 1 in 5 Americans now live in areas, I'm reading from the Daily Mail, covered by his criminal justice reformers. And this is such a clearly calculated attempt to take power politically, where by and large district attorney races have been locally decided. People raise relatively small amounts of money and battle it out inside of neighborhoods with local voters deciding who the district attorney is. Soros exploited what he probably saw as a market inefficiency, where he could spend $40 million and impact the way that people were living all over America in a major way, where you could never do it on a Senate race, or you could never do it on a House race or a governor's race. And he organized and put in place a system that has led to utter collapse and ruination in many cities right now from a crime perspective.
And that's why it's not enough just to look at the Boudin recall and say, oh, sanity is starting to reign in one city. There is a widespread ideology behind this. And I believe even cities like Houston has a pretty progressive, or has had a progressive prosecutor in the past. I know that Chicago, New York, Alvin Bragg, the new prosecutor here, Soros-backed, by the way. He, though, came into office, and it was so, his initial statements within the district attorney's office were so crazy that he had to scale it back a little bit, because we had already suffered the huge increases in crime in the last couple of years that we had seen. But there was an ideology behind this. It was all Democrats. Republicans have been saying, hey, hold on a second. Don't do this. This is bad. Don't make criminality legal. It's a very straightforward, the same way, Clay, spending too much money leads to inflation. Not enforcing the law leads to lawlessness. And there are a lot of Democrats for whom this became a difficult concept to grasp. The reality of the world we live in was too much for them. They thought, you know what? If we're just nicer to criminals, don't prosecute them or let them get arrested 15 times, slap on the wrist. We'll all be safer because they'll be nicer. That's actually not how it works, which rational people, this audience, you and me, know. But Chesa Boudin did not know this quite clearly.
And by the way, the other race I wanted to mention in California, which I do think is substantial. Now, it's not decided. There is a runoff that will now occur. But Rick Caruso, who was until a few years ago a Republican and is now identifying as a Democrat, much like Mayor Bloomberg did. And let's be honest, big city Republicans and big city Democrats who are right on that line sometimes finesse this. He is the leader right now in the election for the new mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, a former congresswoman who Joe Biden considered to be his VP choice and then decided Kamala Harris is way better than her. So, hey, LA, you're listening to us right now in Southern California. Joe Biden considered Karen Bass as his vice presidential candidate, running mate, and then said, wait a minute, Kamala Harris is way more skilled and way better at politics than Karen Bass. They're going to have a runoff between Caruso and Bass. Fingers crossed that Caruso can manage to get this win because it would be another seismic step in a return to rationality in one of the bluest states in America.
So it's unfortunately not going to be, I think, a Democrat party that does a lot of soul searching, even in California after this, because they're just going to say, okay, we tried that, but now we can trust the reasonable Democrats. But we'll see how that goes, too, because once you have the momentum of decay and crime in a city, you know how you turn it. You don't turn it around just by being not crazy. You have to actually, whether it's Los Angeles or it's, whether you're the mayor, the police commissioner, you got to clean things up.
Aggressively stop doing what you are doing and oftentimes do the exact opposite. So we'll see whether or not that happens. But these are two significant signs that we saw in Los Angeles and in San Francisco about what is coming, I hope, in 5 months in terms of a major and substantive change in the direction of this country.